Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of highly entertaining and highly exciting racing action in the middle of the pack Racing League GTE League for 2026, brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, folks, we're back for another round of intense and thrilling racing action, and with it being round number 5 is the commencement of the second half of the season. We have wrapped up the US Cup, that being last time out in a thrilling feature race, and we have made our way all the way to the continent of Europe for the commencement of the Euro Cup. But where exactly do we start the story of the second half of the season? Well, we start at arguably the ultimate testing circuit used on an annual basis by the likes of Formula 1, GT World Championship and the 24-hour series, not just to host races, but also to set balance of performance and give drivers plenty of pre-season tests alongside their teams. It is none other than the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. And it's no wonder why this circuit is so popular with drivers and teams, but perhaps a little bit less so for fans, given it has received a notoriety. And since its opening in 1991, it's been a circuit that's thrilling to drive around, but not thrilling to overtake at, given the challenging difficulties of overtaking, and it is because it has a wide variety of corners and straights. An incredibly long start-finish straight begins the 2.89 mile lap, and then our drivers have to weave and wind their way for a combination of chicanes, sweepers, hairpins, you name it, it's got it, and also some rather significant elevation changes that make some of these corners cambered, if not off camber, and for our drivers, they'll need to be smart, they'll need to be clever for the 16 corners, and this is really going to expose those who have mastered the art of the corner in their GT machine versus those who are still trying to make sure they get it right under trail braking or able to get on the throttle immediately on corner exit. But who exactly is going to lead the way? Who may set the best time in qualifying, and could that be the story of the day, taking pole position and converting it into a win? Or will we see some brilliant battles? Well, I'm sure we will, if our drivers are anything to be guessed at, in the fact they'll find a way to overtake even the circuits where they say it's impossible to overtake. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this post-round broadcast from Circuit Side as we catch up today with all the racing action as if it were live. Indeed, the racing you're going to be seeing is not live. It occurred all the way back on the Wednesday, the 22nd of April 2026, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live today, this Saturday, the 2nd of May. Therefore, in the content booth, we do not know who's going to be on top in the practice session. It's currently coming to a close, nor the upcoming qualifying session, and most importantly, who our winners are going to be in the Pro and also the Pro-Am classes in our one and only race. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because I haven't told you the schedule for today. Speaking of our race schedule then, times in Eastern Daylight Time, that's EDT, or Universal Coordinate Time -4, UTC -4, and as we can see in approximately what will be around about 7 minutes time, we'll be making our way into our qualifying session, 10 minutes in duration, what this being a sprint race round, and therefore all drivers out of the circuit looking to go for pole position over the course of 10 minutes, due to getting away at 8:15, after which we'll then be making our way straight to the grid, and at 8:20 they'll be lining up for the 45-minute sprint race to officially get the Euro Cup underway. This broadcast being brought to you, of course, in one only place on YouTube, that you can catch all the race action from the middle of the pack with Racing League series, and that is of course on youtube.com, and search for Paul Walsh Productions or PWP. And in the commentary booth, as always, you have myself. My name's Paul Walsh, and I'll bring you all your racing action over the season. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring you up to speed the story so far after 4 rounds and give you a recap of what exactly happened in round number 4. And as we do take a look back to our calendar, of course, the US Cup culminated with a trip to Sebring in the US state of Florida on the 8th of April. And what a round it was to complete the first half of the season. Indeed, we had an incredible 1-hour race at Sebring, whereby there were battles everywhere you looked, whether it be at the front all the way to the very back. Although one man who definitely did not find any battles other than battling with the circuit to make sure he took pole position and then ran away with the victory overall in Pro, Ryan Otis, who was absolutely dominant as the lights descended and it went to darkness, but to be fair, he found his way and he was definitely the shining light of the grid. So then what happened behind him? Well, in the Pro category, there was a huge battle for the rest of the overall podium spots, and then there was a race-long 6-way fight which saw Julian Jones gradually break away to take second, using strategy to his advantage, and elsewhere, Chad Henson was able to hold off Shahi's Air to take 3rd place. But there was so much more than that. We got to see Eric Lagai fight in the part of that and took 5th place in the end, not quite having it work out for him, unfortunately. And we also did see James Logsdon and Matt Best both experience major mistakes and also drive-through penalties for black flag for instant points, and that meant they were taking out the fight very gradually. But otherwise, it really was a 6-way fight, and it kept us guessing all the way to the end. But that was your pros and your overall top 7. What about the pros out there? Because we can't forget the second tier of our drivers who are always pushing to become pros themselves. We got to see an absolutely brilliant battle there for victory in the Pro-Am class, whereby Jermaine Warren took the win in the end, and he was the quickest driver out of the trio of himself, Donald Cepek and Tom Bryce, but at the start of the race, it looked as though it could be going the way of Tom Bryce. But as time went on, we saw Warren just gradually start to outpace his rivals and was able to casually break away through strategy, and it enabled him to make sure he took the Pro-Am win. Elsewhere, we did see what was the battle between Donald Cepek and Tom Bryce continue to escalate, and in the end, it would be second place that went in the Pro-Am class to Donald Cepek, and Tom Bryce just missing out and had to take third instead. But what a brilliant race it was, non-stop all the way through, and really showing you how important Sebring is when it comes to being a culmination of American circuits, and why in the US state of Florida is definitely the go-to track. But of course, we now make our way into the Euro Cup. If the US Cup was a celebration of racing circuits in the US of A, the Euro Cup is the equivalent for the European continent, and we're definitely going to be seeing our drivers take on some of the finest circuits in the European countries. But also, most of these circuits have recently played host to what is GTE racing until the closure of the GTE class from World Endurance Racing in the World Endurance Championship, plus also IMSA in 2023. And that's why we've made our way to the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya today, where these cars have raced around there previously. And well, then we make it our way to Imola in Italy, into a staple of the World Endurance Championship, and has definitely seen plenty of GTE racing action in the past. Then we'll be heading to Silverstone in the United Kingdom, which, as far as I'm aware, has not had GTEs in their modern guys at least go racing around there. But they may have gone racing around there in what was the early noughties when the GTE class was unveiled to the world in 1999. Indeed, when it was under a different classification rather than the GTE moniker that we now know it as. So therefore, Silverstone is a little bit of a bogey, perhaps, in the fact it may never have actually seen GTE racing in its purest form, but it definitely should have, and that will be on the 20th of May in the United Kingdom. And then our season finale, the conclusion of the Euro Cup, will be at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, everyone's favourite Belgian circuit, and that'll be on the 3rd of June. And well, definitely the home of endurance racing out on the European continent, unless of course you think about Le Mans. But Le Mans was not available for this season, but Spa-Francorchamps definitely was, and we're very pleased to be going racing there for the feature race finale of the Euro Cup, and also for the overall championship. So we've regaled you of what exactly went down at Sebring, and we told you who the podium finishers were in each of the classes. But of course, now we need to think about how does that affect the standings coming into this round. Well, let's take a look at the round 4 standings. And here we can see, after Road America, looking to your left, you've got Pro, and there you see James Logsdon leads by only 6 points over Chad Henson. And of course, the story for James Logsdon was one whereby he started 4th place in the overall grid and took 6th place in the end. He was right in the thick of that battle for the podium from the very start, but an instant after going on to his second stint saw him pick up a black flag drive-through penalty, and that spoiled his chances of finishing on the podium. Although, to be fair to Logsdon, he had the pace to catch back up to the top 5, but he ran out of time, so therefore it did mean that his US Cup ended on a bit of a bittersweet high, because he took the Pro Cup crown as the leader in the class. But the only problem is he ended off of the podium. So it was a little bit of an odd situation whereby he's lost ground in the overall championship in terms of his lead has been slashed to 6 points over Chad Henson, but he still managed to bring home the first major accolade of the season. Henson, meanwhile, continued to push forward and went from 9th all the way to 3rd, and it was a huge run from him after a difficult start to the race because he was dropped by Ryan Otis, but he did seem to take control of second place early on, and then it was all about the battle for that runner-up spot between himself and many of his rivals, although he did have a bit of fall down the order. He fell all the way down to 6th place at one point as well, and that was due to the fact that whilst the batting was so fierce, we also got to see a couple of instances as well, and unfortunately Chad Henson was the one who definitely picked up more of the damage on the car, but he didn't give up, and he continued to push on as much as humanly possible, and that's how he was able to fight his way all the way back up to 3rd place in the end, although unfortunately could not quite catch up to Julian Jones, who was just able to run away, but he definitely made sure that he was able to stay one step ahead of Shahi Zahair right at the end of the day. Speaking of which, Shahi Zahair sits in 3rd place at 156 points, and his story was one of starting in 3rd, but finishing 4th. He had the pace in the BMW, but the difficulty was with respect to the fact that over the long-term distance, we saw the BMW just gradually slope off in pace, and it wasn't quite working out the way he wanted it to. However, we have had a minor balance of performance update coming into this round and into the Euro Cup, so that may just potentially change the nature of these cars a little bit, and we do believe it's going to help bring the BMW more in line in the long-term pace, and particularly under braking compared to its rivals, and we have seen the Porsche 911 RSR have its dominance perhaps restricted a little bit, particularly with a lot more aerodynamic drag and less fuel efficiency for the car. So it'll be very interesting to see how our GTE drivers now all line up, although here today I can tell you we've only got Porsches and BMWs. We've got no Ferraris, no Fords, and sadly as well, We don't have anybody in what is the Corvette. But still, Shahi's Hair sits in third. He's 156 points. He's the best part of 15 ahead of Taylor Bookout. And, well, then we do have Julian Jones. A sizable difference between himself and Bookout to the tune of a grand total of 34 points in 5th place. But he's ahead of Matt Best by 2 points. And then we do have Gabriel Ferreira, Eric Lagai, Ryan Otis, and Matthew Morehart completing the top 10. And we'll keep your eyes on Ryan Otis because he's definitely quite a quick riser. And the same for Matthew Morehart. Both of them making their debut midway for the US Cup. And they've definitely been two drivers who you need to keep your eyes out all the way through because they can surprise everybody, particularly Ryan Otis. Can he make it another win today after that dominant run at Sebring? Well, outside the top 10, we've got Blake Phillips ahead of Jason Landry, and then Edwin Offret and David Adeyee complete your standings for the pros. To the right, we have the primes. It's Jermaine Warren who leads the way, having taken what was the US Cup crown by a single point over Donald Seebeck. But do keep in mind that with that victory, Jermaine Warren has been promoted to the pro class for the rest of the season, so therefore you won't see him in the prime anymore, you will see him in the pros, and that will open up the doorway. And Donald Seebeck effectively becomes the de facto leader in the prime class, and he will have a 10-point advantage over Tom Bryce going into the second half of the season. But the story, of course, that brilliant battle between Seebeck and Bryce for the run-up spot, with Warren just gradually being able to pull away after finding himself in the thick of it for the opening, what was 25 minutes the race at Sebring, and therefore really right now how they sit in the standings coming into this round shows how they all finished and how it all came together. Glenn Bratton sits in 4th there, never counts him out in the 134 points that he's been able to bring to the table thus far. He's quite comfortably ahead now by 33 points ahead of Mark Senegal, with Roger Ganesh, Carl Peterson and Bill DaCosta completing the prime standings. But as for our host circuit for today, we brought you up to speed with the story after 4 rounds. Let's tell you a little bit about where we're racing. Of course, we're racing at the Grand Prix layout of the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, this being of course the pre-2021 Grand Prix layout, whereby the archaic hairpin is in its short speed nature, what is a first gear corner, and of course the historical layout of this circuit prior to what is the year of 2003, if my memory serves me correctly, actually saw what was a wider arch hairpin there, archaic, whereby it was able to carry a lot more speed, and that hairpin has actually been restored as of 2021 going into 2022, although we're racing on the interluding period, whereby it was turned into what was a more aggressive braking zone, and therefore the idea was to create a better overtaking zone. Then this circuit located near the town of Montmeló in the region of Barcelona, in the Catalonian region of Spain, indeed Montmeló being what is a town within the city limits of Barcelona City, and that's where you do see the name of the circuit originally come from. It originally was the Circuit de Barcelona, but it became the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya as part of a sponsorship deal. But this circuit, an absolutely brilliant one, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it, and we can see 16 corners, plenty of variety here. Sweepers, chicanes, hairpins, and short straights as well. That very long start for the straight there, giving drivers a prime opportunity to go battling and overtaking in towards turn number 1. But rather than wax lyrical about the circuit for a circuit diagram, we'll bring you a few on boards when we do go into qualifying that's just around the corner. And as for our rules, of course, we just give you a quick reminder of these. Drivers are running a fixed setup as provided by the Middle of the Pack Racing League Administration. Fuel loads are restricted to 50%. Qualifying, it's an open qualifying format, so all drivers will be out on the circuit together. They can theoretically impede each other, but they can also pick up a slipstream off of each other, and therefore adds a little bit of risk versus reward to the qualifying session. When we do see our sprint race get underway, it shall start by a rolling start, as is an edition of GTE Racing. Each driver has one fast pair available should they need to use it for damage, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 10 or more instant points. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to circuit side, and the circuit goes quiet because practice is over. It's time to turn some laps in anger. It's time for our first qualifying session of the Euro Cup, and who exactly is going to prove king here at the Circuit Barcelona-Catalunya? Let's find out. And so, as our time begins to tick away, we'll be seeing our drivers make the way out as quickly as possible, as James Logsdon immediately springs into action here. Indeed, 10 minutes is not long, particularly given that the nature of the circuit is, well, the longer laps on the calendar. Not in terms of length, but in terms of time, because you do have a significant number of braking zones, but also, of course, you do have the fact that around here you've got plenty of acceleration zones which follow. You're never quite running at a very comfortable top-end speed. But as we do see the headlights going on then, indeed, a natural light has got away. Well, Jermaine Warren right now makes way now. He's got Shahi's Hair right behind him. But as a reminder, Jermaine Warren, he is now in the pro class of what was it, US Cup Pro-Am champion. Well, he's now promoted to pro, so therefore we will have a new Pro-Am champion coming the end of the Euro Cup. But will it be Tom Bryce, or will it be Glenn Bratton, or one of the other rivals, including Donald Seepeck? We've only got 2 Pro-Ams here today, Bryce and Bratton, so therefore Whilst that does create a little bit of jingle to the words, well, we're not seeing all of our programs here, but hopefully we'll see Donald Cepek back in later on this season, because it's not quite the same without him, and definitely you want to be on the grid for every round you can be on when you're chasing Cup glory, versus, of course, where it's overall championship glory, where you do have a drop score available to you. As we do see Bratton make his way around in the BMW, how important is qualifying going to be in reality, some of you will be wondering, given the fact we did allude to earlier on that this circuit has a reputation for being very difficult for overtaking. Now, we should be very clear that difficulty for overtaking here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya stems from Formula 1. Very high downforce machines, open wheel, close cockpit machines, but here in these GTEs, they do have a lot of downforce on them. They have a bit more aggressive downforce compared to GT3s, the class that replaced them in real life racing as 2024 in the World Endurance Championship. Replaced them in what was IMSA, as if my memory serves me correctly, what was 2021. Indeed, just a slight desynchronization there between the two series, but running the classes, and all that replacement being due to the fact they wanted to make the cars more approachable, but also more affordable to go racing with. More approachable to the drivers, and that was the introduction of the anti-lock braking system, or ABS, whereas, of course, these cars as well, based on the road cars, but then again, there were exclusivities and also exemptions to that rule, and we don't have it here today, but the Ford GT being a very good example of it in terms of fact, technically a road car, actually the car that did go racing, an exception from the road car, but then again a waiver had to be signed, and there's a whole lot of politics around that. And indeed, it does make the Ford GT one of those cars whereby when you do speak to some big motorsport fans, they actually turn the other way when you show them a picture of that Ford GT car, which is a bit sad, but understandably, because some would say that car did break the rules of racing all those many years ago. But then again, is it breaking the rules, or is it bending the rules? Because at the end of the day, any team and any manufacturer will say, so long as we haven't theoretically broken the rules, we've bent them as far as we can, then we're doing something that's within the book. But I digress. We come back to the fault of overtaking challenges. Well, the key thing about this circuit is if you're going to make a move, you need to be very bold with the move. You need to be very decisive with your overtaking opportunities. As we do see there, Jermaine Warren taking a bit of a rally cross line, coming up towards turn number 9. And I think just reaching track limits there, coming out to 7 in towards 8. It's not impossible, but overtaking will be restricted to certain points on that, particularly in the run down towards turn number 1. That's a given. But also, if you get a good run out of turns 1 and 2, you can go for moves through turns 3 in towards 4, and even into the hairpin at turn number 5. The middle sector, which does start with turn number 4, well, all the battling will end at turn number 5, and then you'll see it open back up, potentially going in towards turn number 10, of which we have seen a couple of drivers make their way towards it, including Taylor Bookout, who is now making his way into the braking zone for Logsdon bend, and onto the brakes he will go. As he does so, that's an overtaking opportunity, and this final sector, you won't see too many moves, potentially all the way through turns 11 through to 15, but the run out of turn 16 will definitely set our drivers up for a sweeping run onto another lap. But speaking of going onto a lap, here is Matthew Morhart, and let's jump on board with him as he takes us around for a flying lap of the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya's Grand Prix course. So making his way out of the final corner and towards the timeline in his Porsche 911 RSR. He powers his way onwards, heading down towards turn number 1. As he does so here, it's a long charge and heading upwards of 155 miles an hour, 160 as he'll go onto the brakes here, 150 meters from corner apex. Down towards third gear, he goes right into left here. Somebody gets it wrong off in the distance, and well, we'll see who that was very shortly. But now coming in towards turn number 3, brings the car to the left to open up the right-hander as he makes his way all the way on through. We'll now get on the throttle nice and early, as that's Glenn Bratton getting it wrong. Well, when he makes his way up towards Repsol Bend, not just because of the banners, but also the name of the corner officially, and onto the brakes nice and early there, get a nice tight entry and get on the power very aggressively as you exit out. Now heading in towards the hairpin of turn number 5. And downhill braking zone here is to brake 100 centimeters from quarter apex. He has no brake marker, that's done on muscle memory. And now heading in towards turn number 7. TV-free corner, due to sponsorship reasons, brings it over to the right hand side, onto the brakes, 100 meters from the bend, travels off nice and early, third gear, and making sure to follow the contours of the road as he comes through the kink of 8. And now in towards turn number 9, the off-camber corner at the apex, but it's completely blind as you approach the bend, and will therefore cars are very prone to understeering wide, but not so more hard there, just about keeps it at track limits. Now down towards the Logsdon hairpin at turn number 10, braking the 150 meter board, down to first gear, the lowest speed corner on the circuit, comes now uphill through turns 11 and 12, the left-hander that gives way to the uphill right-hander, and here it's about not getting greedy with the throttle, and just about keeps it nice and tight as he exits out and now makes his way into Europe car of turn number 13. Through the right-hander and down here, into the chicane that was added to try and introduce overtaking opportunities, but not for Morhart when he gets it wrong like that, goes very deep, and has got to get it back together from RACC, and through Catalunya bend at turn number 6, 1:16, but a scrappy end to lap there for Matthew Morehart. That's not what he wanted whatsoever as he heads towards the timeline, and he's going to have to do it all over again. An innocent mistake there, an easy mistake to make, and well, he does not improve from his current third place, but a lot of drivers are yet to get a lap on the board. I think a lot of drivers are struggling out there in this qualifying session. This is not an easy circuit to get a good lap at. Indeed, it only takes one small mistake and it completely compromises the lap. But Glenn Bratton right now comes across line. He was the man who ended up in the gravel trap coming out of turn number 2 moments ago, but right now he's getting his head down there in the BMW M8 and seeing what else he can do with it. Of course, the wonderful V8 powered twin turbo machine, and we're the only front engine rear wheel drive car out there. All the others mid-engine rear wheel drive. As Bratton makes his way in towards turn number 4. And still more time to be found, unless your name is Ryan Otis, it would seem, who currently the fastest in all out there, 42.872, and well, the big smile on the front of his Porsche, and he'll be smiling right now, thinking that he may have got this done. Here's James Logsdon, his closest rival. Well, Logsdon is currently second fastest. He's 4 attempts off, and he's just up the road. They do have 3 minutes left to go. And keep in mind, we do have overtime in effect in this qualifying session. So therefore, when the clock goes to 0, if they are on a lap, they're allowed to finish it. And it could be a bit of a key conundrum there. Is it the time right at the end of the session to get the best possible lap out there? It normally is, given the fact we are running fixed setups, which means that our drivers have a fuel load that is prescribed to the car. As Logsdon improves by practically 4 attempts there, and just off of Otis now, boys, half a tenth. And well, Ryan Otis immediately responds and says, well done, James. Now you've got to go even quicker because I've just raised the bar to a 42.573. So James Logsdon's going to look at his relative and see that he's improved and got very close, and then notice that actually now the boundary conditions have been moved. It's the goalposts that have been moved effectively. Shahi's ahead, Friday gets his lap on the board at 44.154. An impressive lap there. It is BMW M8. We are expecting the BMWs to perhaps struggle a little bit here, given the fact this is a very corner-focused circuit, although you do have that long start for the straight. And you do have a couple of key acceleration zones, particularly the run out to turn what is 9 in towards 10, and the BMW is known more for its straight line prowess rather than its cornering ability, and therefore it seems as though Shahi's here right now may be battling uphill, as will Glenn Bratton. But of course, that's why we do have a whole variety of circuits, and we do make our way to Imola in what will be a 2 weeks time. We'll definitely see our drivers there be able to exhibit more of the prowess of the BMW, because you've got a lot more straights and acceleration zones versus what you do have here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. So the Porsches may be on the back foot of what will be the Italian circuit. But Zahir makes his way out right now. Car gliding a little bit loose there and keeping it just about within track limits. So that transition from left into right through turn 7, 8 can catch out many as he carries a bit too much speed there coming through turn 9, and that's what happens when the car understeers wide due to the off-camber nature of the corner. That invalidates lap, and now he'll back off there, going across the dust that's been blown across the circuit. Indeed, high winds at this circuit can definitely change its characteristics, and that's one of the interesting things about the Circuit Barcelona-Catalunya. No 2 race days here are the same. Now, you could say that theoretically at any circuit, given the wind conditions, for example, but it really is true here, the fact that if you do have a wind that's a headwind down the start for the straight, that will completely change the way you break into turn 1, but it'll change the nature of most of the corners around here, and it applies regardless of which way the wind blows. This circuit evolves very quickly. Indeed, you could say in some respects it is the equivalent of the Hungaroring in Hungary, in the fact that if the wind continues to blow aggressively, the circuit never quite clears of dust, debris and sand. Meanwhile, here today you'll definitely see quite a bit of dust blown across the circuit from the gravel traps, but also what you'll find out is if the wind changes direction, the lap times will evolve very quickly, either positively or negatively. And Ryan Otis makes his way around. And right now, the number 3 driver, well, he's definitely number 1 out there in terms of times, but Logsdon and Morehart are closing. Logsdon is now only 1.5 tenths off. These lap times are coming down. Taylor Bookout, meanwhile, goes 5th fastest at 44.559. We have no lap time from Tom Bryce, and in fact, I do believe Bryce has opted just to stay in the pit lane in the end, so he's not going back out there. So I think Bryce is going to start from the back of the field, and given we only have 9 drivers here today, well, he's definitely going to have an opportunity to pick up some valuable points. But Jermaine Warren makes his way down, and the clock is about to go to 0, and there it goes. Qualifying is complete, but we do have overtime, of course, and now these laps are going to become incredibly precious. But Jermaine Warren, no lap on the board. Matt Bett, well, he's going to get no lap on the board either as he parked up there. That's on the exit of turn number 10, but on the inside, not to cause an inconvenience on the racing line. So it's gone very backwards to best, when he should be going forward. So the Texas Speed Sim racing driver is not having a happy day at the office. So it's all James Logsdon there taking a bit too much curb. At turn 14, that sends the car sideways. He will not be taking pole position then, and the best he will achieve is second place. But meanwhile, what can Ryan Otis do? Well, he sees that Logsdon's coming. I think he's decided he's going to come in as well. He was not improving. Matthew Morhart, he's on a bit of a better lap at the moment as he makes his way around. His middle sector has been as good as his previous best, as that's somebody who's got very wide there coming out of turn number 13. In fact, turn 12, who is that? That was Jermaine Warren, I think, who's just crawling along, so staying out the way. So Warren's had a bit of a nightmare day, no lap set. Shahi Zahair's come on through meanwhile. He goes faster into fourth place, a 43.288. Still, though, the best part of 4.5 tenths off of Matthew Morhart. And, well, anybody else out on the lap at the moment? As Glenn Bratton's had it go wrong, so he's not going to improve. Taylor Bookout goes straight on, bounces over the sausage curves there, and that is qualified complete, ladies and gentlemen. So, in the end, apart from Shahi Zahair putting in a late improvement, everyone else has been struggling to improve, and with it, it means that Ryan Otis will take pole position overall in pro on a 42.381, 1.5 tenths ahead of James Logsdon. That'll be front row. Matthew Morhart and Shahi Zahair will be on row number 2 together with quite a sizable gap between each other and also from the front row, and that gap being the best part of 3 tenths to the front row. And then we'll see Taylor Bookout, 5th of your pros and overall, with Glenn Bratton being your pole sitter in the Pro-Am class, will be 3 tenths behind but start 6th, and there'll be Matt Best ahead of Tom Bryce and Jermaine Warren who will complete the starting order. But definitely a qualifying session where this circuit has been absolutely merciless and a lot of drivers have struggled. And is that going to translate into how they perform in the race? Well, we're not going to be too far away from finding out, but definitely right now with those struggles, I wouldn't be surprised here if we are going to see the order shaken up when we do go racing. But this qualifying session has only given us an indication of how drivers perform when they're pressured to deliver the absolutely perfect single lap, but how will they perform when they need to be absolutely consistent over 45 minutes and a final lap of racing? Plus, of course, we do expect there to be a pit stop in there for fuel. Changing tyres is entirely optional, and we're not expecting any tyre changes given the shortness of the race. And the fact, remember, in GTE, you take fuel first and then the tyres are changed. It's not done in parallel, unlike GT3 racing, and that is as per the World Endurance Championship regulations, of which these cars are based. But as we do look to the wonderful scenic view once again, we can definitely see that we've now progressed towards the evening hours with the amount of sunlight being restricted. Well, here we go. It's getting darker still, and in fact, the lights go down and the circuit lights do go on as it's time for our drivers to make the way to the grid. And as they do, this is how they'll line up for round number 5 of the middle of the pack Racing League, GTE League for 2026, brought to you on iRacing. And it will be Ryan Otis who takes pole position today, the privateer. And what a pole position it is for him, carrying on his run from Sebring, and he'll be hoping to maintain that win streak. James Logsdon, his fellow American, starts in second for Team Bear Pope. That'll be your front row, 1.5 tenths between the two of them. It was then 3 tenths further back to Matthew Morhart, who starts in third place, and he'll be very happy there to be just ahead of Shahi Zahair, but Zahair will know he's got some work to do if he wants to make the magic happen. The Sri Lankan driver was the best part of 4.5 tenths behind Morhart, but in turn he was 1.2 seconds quicker than Taylor Bookout, who in the end was able to scramble a lap to get a race at the end of qualifying, but it does not look to be the lap that he really wanted. Still, he starts 5th, and Glenn Bratton will be 6th. The Pro-Am pole sitter there in the 289, and well, he was the best part of 3 tenths behind Bookout, but in turn, he was comfortably clear of Matt Best, Jermaine Warren, who line up together on row number 4 with no lap set for Texas Speed Sim Racing or MOP Racing respectively, and well, Warren makes his debut in the Pro class, being promoted up from Pro-Am after his glory in the US Cup, and we'll see Tom Bryce, the last of our Pro-Ams and starters, in 9th place with no lap set either, struggling in qualifying, but can he find a way to steal away the Pro-Am win? We'll have to wait and see, because ladies and gentlemen, the formation lap is about to get underway, and unfortunately, I do believe we're not going to see Tom Bryce take it to this formation lap, so only 8 cars make it, and something tells me we might be seeing Tom Bryce not able to start the race, and if so, that's due to a technical issue with the car that came up in qualifying, and that's why he did not complete the qualifying session, and we may be down to 8 runners. But still, remember, this is a series where points are awarded overall, and you get some bonus points for being in the Pro-Am class if you make it to the podium, normally 3 for first, 2 for second, and 1 for third, but otherwise, everyone is encouraged, first and foremost, to battle each other regardless of class, because every place you take in the overall positions will be added on in terms of points to what will be your championship standing. So therefore, that's why as a pro driver you do not want a Pro-Am in front of you, but as a Pro-Am you want to try and poke your nose in and beat the pros wherever possible. It's not just a bragging rights, but it could have big championship connotations right at the end of the season. As the drivers make the way on this short formation lap through the last couple of quarters, it's over to Ryan Otis to take us away for round number 5 of the championship. and he makes his way onto the start to finish straight and holding the speed for now. He's going to wait there eagerly so. When will Ryan Otis go green? And the answer to that question is going to be we are green right now as we are going racing for 45 minutes here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, and Ryan Otis leaving it quite late in the day. To be fair, nobody wants to. It's a long run down towards turn 1, and James Logsdon immediately looking around the outside, and Logsdon was off the pace in qualifying but takes the lead straight away. Matthew Morehart therefore back behind Shahi's Aher, who gets a brilliant run, and Otis started on the outside, seemed to nail it into turn 1. Taylor Bookout meanwhile attacking hard here as they make the way around, and great news, Tom Bryce has made it out there. The team have made a quick fix to the car, so we've got all 9 runners, but Bryce will be listed as a lap down initially, but he'll be brought onto the lead lap once our timing tower updates itself. But a brilliant start there from all the drivers involved as the headlights go on. And definitely right now, darkness descends here, but there'll be a little bit of ambient light most likely. And, well, great start for Logsdon. Otis still a little bit behind. And Shahi's Aher all over the back of him. That BMW is looking very quick off the race start here compared to the Porsches. And perhaps that's now its new strength, the fact it's got a lightning start. And it's all about managing the car later on in the race. But meanwhile, Matt Best, he finds himself caught up behind Taylor Bookout with Jermaine Warren in the closing spaces there. As we do see Glenn Bratton a bit further behind, the prime leader at the moment. Oh, that's gone sideways for Bookout. Coming out to turn number 8. And we collects the car back together, but not without that mistake. And there you can see Tom Bryce further back, and right now trying to play catch up to the field. Having started from the pit lane, he does have the best part of what is a 15-second deficit. Meanwhile, James Logsdon, leader right now, going through the hairpin at turn number 10 for the first time, asking anger as that's a couple of cars going wide, and that was Jermaine Warren taking a bit of a rally cross line, and Taylor Bookout doing the same there as well. And I suspect cold tyres here and still trying to warm up the track as well. It's not going to help them out at all. This circuit is definitely getting a bit cold, but that's what happens when the sun goes down and the night lights go on. The circuit does gradually lose track temperature, and with it you've got to be just that little bit more cautious. Logsdon makes his way through the final corner. 1 lap complete. Plenty more to come. It's Logsdon who leads by 3/10 head of Otis. Oh, and that's gone wide in the rear. And that is going to be the car of, I believe, Matt Best. End up in the gravel track going out to Catalunya Bend. So Best going wide. We're going to replay that very shortly. But meanwhile, at the front of the field, it's Logsdon still 2/10 head of Otis as they break for turn 1. So Aher sits in third ahead of Morehart, followed by Warren, who's in 5th at the moment, falling away from the leaders by 2.5 seconds, but he'll try and get closer when he can. And then we do have your prime leader of Glenn Bratton, currently in 6th place, ahead of Taylor Bookout, with Matt Best recovering now in 8th place. And Tom Bryce, meanwhile, well, he's definitely on the lead lap. We can probably show that, even though the time tower says he's a lap down. But right now, running 9th place, they're second of the prime drivers. But they all weave and wind the way between the corners. Well, James Logsdon and definitely feeling a bit of pressure from Ryan Otis after getting that brilliant start to take the lead in towards turn number 1. And as we said earlier on, those who started on the outside of the circuit, they just had more grip, and I suspect that might be where the wind has blown some dust to the inside of the circuit on the start-finish straight. And will those who started there with their cold tyres, understandably not able to quite get the grip they wanted and lay the power down. But right now, Logsdon's got to try and keep Otis behind him for the whole race distance. That's going to be far from easy as they continue to wind their way around. You can see this top 4 is definitely now started to break away a little bit, as meanwhile Jermaine Warren just falling back in his BMW in the rear of the picture. Then again, it could all change. It could be a big strategic approach here. We do know that Warren is very good normally with regards to fuel saving, also tyre management. He is the king of lift and coast, and therefore it could definitely prove quite pivotal. As meanwhile, Glenn Bratton goes round, and that's going to be 6th place, falling out of his hands and into the hands of Taylor Bookout it goes. And Matt Best is going to close up quite quickly, and Best will take that place as well. So Bratton now down to 8th place, and Tom Bryce is not too far behind to challenge for the lead of the prime class. But still, we look back to Logsdon, your leader, as he comes toward the end of lap number 2. He's dropping Otis, as Otis right now has got Zaher close behind him. But here they go down the start finish straight, and Shahi Zaher going on the attack as we ride aboard with the privateer from Sri Lanka. And well, he's just going to simply ride on the rear bumper there of Otis. Does not want to make the move this early. Well, perhaps he feels as though right now Ryan Otis has just had a bad lap rather than not having the pace by comparison. And if so, that's a lot of faith being put in the man in front. And I suspect he'll be hoping that faith is paid back later on. But if not, well, he might just miss an opportunity to move into 2nd place. The Hare's definitely got a game plan here. And I think expecting that Otis will put the pressure on Logsdon later on, given their respective qualifying times. But we will see. One other thing we can definitely see, ladies and gentlemen, is what exactly happened at the race start as we take a quick look back. And of course, all these replays being brought to you courtesy of Arturo Mioga's brilliant software. As here we go, back to the race start. So as we went green flag racing, on the right was James Logsdon, Ryan Otis was on the left, and whilst Otis did leave it late to go, well, to be fair, James Logsdon said, no matter how late you go, I'm going with you. And here they made the way down towards turn number 1, it was side by side every step of the way, and as they do, well, in the end, it was going to be Logsdon looking all the way around the houses, and under braking, just having a bit more confidence there on the cold tyres and cold brakes, was able to get that move done, and Shahi's ahead doing the same to Matthew Morehart. So, when did things start going wrong for drivers, I hear you ask? Well, this is where it went a bit wrong for Jermaine Warren on the opening lap. And this was Warren making his way down to Logis's hairpin. onto the brakes he did go, but in the end, cold brakes, a bit too much speed, and the car just went naturally wide. And we did see Taylor Bookout do the same, albeit a bit more grandiose there in terms of how wide he went. Matt Best, meanwhile, had it all go wrong at the end of the open lap. This was coming out of the chicane and then made his way in towards Catalunya Bend, took a bit of the sausage curve that unsettled the car, and then made his way through the corner, and the cold tyres at the rear just meant he didn't quite have the grip coming out of the corner, and he slid into the gravel trap. But then on lap number 2, we had this for Glenn Bratton. And while your prime leader at the time made his way into the Logsdon, and he made his way onto those brakes in particular, it all went just a little bit wrong. Made his way in, the rear of the car simply said no as the rear brakes locked and then unlocked themselves and we just jolted the car on around. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's back to your live racing we go. As we do come back, well, 5 minutes to this race complete, still plenty more time in the tank, no doubt about it. And that's the exciting thing about the GTE League, brought to you by the Middle of the Pack Racing League, in the fact that whilst the gaps may be spreading a little bit, they will come back together normally. And that's what we saw at Sebring. When gaps opened up for a brief moment, it literally was for a couple of minutes, and then suddenly it all came back. And that's not because of artificial rubber banding or anything like that. These drivers right now, they're all driving on the absolute limit. And Matthew Morhart is starting to close up a little bit versus Shahi Zahair as we ride aboard with the number 10 driver, the privateer, and the Motul sponsor car right now staying nice and back there going through turn 9. He's got to do that given the dirty air. He's got to offset the understeer that's going to be invoked in the car. And what we are definitely seeing as a result of the balance performance update, and that was of course on the 22nd of April, so on the day this race took place, it occurred just before the race, so therefore drivers didn't have too much time to familiarise themselves with their adjusted cars. It looks as though that BMW is a lot more comfortable under braking now and seems to be able to retain its pace a bit more comfortably compared to how it was at pre-BOP adjustment. And the Porsche, meanwhile, with its increased aerodynamic drag, it may not feel as good on the straights, and particularly in the draft anymore. It might be losing just that little bit more speed. As Morhart follows after Zaire at the moment, but he's not able to close, but at the same time not really being dropped, as a new fastest lap of the race, the first 42 of the day, and that is a 42.9 for James Logsdon, as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. And right now just gradually gapping Otis, but what is Ryan Otis doing to try and make sure that Logsdon doesn't get away, given the fact that gap has opened, it is continuing to open. Now, some of the things that he might be doing at this point, of course, he might be going immediately into a bit of a fuel-saving mode, where mentally he might be thinking to himself, okay, if Logsdon's going to try and bolt away, well, as long as I don't let that gap get too big, if I can keep him within 2 seconds and do a lot of fuel-saving time management along the way, he'll definitely have a shorter pit stop for putting the fuel back into the car, but also he'll have the better tyres towards the end of the race, which could always prove quite crucial. Shahi's here, Matthew Morhart will be looking at this as well and thinking, now do they adjust their strategies to sit with the man in second, or do they see that they need to get clear of him? Furthermore, back we can see that Tom Bryce, after his pit lane start, the team were able to get the car repaired for the Lazy Boy outfit. Will right now make his way out to turn number 4, chasing after Glenn Bratton for the prime lead. And we're getting closer and closer with each corner turned here, so he might have an opportunity soon to go for a move. As we ride aboard with the 272, and these two battling for the last of the points. But to be fair, for the prime drivers, it's all valuable to them. And of course, they're battling for the bonus points for first and second in class. Going through up the left into right, whilst we do only have 2 primes here today, to be fair, whether it's 2 or 20 of them, well, these two definitely keep us entertained. As Bryce right now, as much as he can stay close, I think he's now starting to experience the effects of the dirty air off the back of Bratton's car, and therefore he's just having to adjust his lines a little bit to compensate. Of course, you don't normally get much practice in regards to driving in the dirty air when you're practicing by yourself or in the build-up to a race day, but it's when you're in the race you have to start making those micro adjustments to your driving approach, while the key ones being that you need to essentially start turning to the corners a little bit earlier, and you shave off a little bit more speed under braking, and that prevents understeer kicking in. But new fastest lap of the race, Ryan Otis, a 42.809. So he is reacting to Logsdon, who set a 42.860 to what was his previous lap. And therefore it does mean that Otis now starting to bounce back a little bit. Shahi Zahair, that last lap of 43.32. So the best part of half a second off of the top 2. And Matthew Morhart of 43.01, a personal best. And Morhart's now started to up the tempo. And perhaps we are starting to see that the Porsche is coming alive a bit more compared to the BMW. But then again, Zahair might just be doing some race management at the moment. And well, with that slightly weak lap, it has caused him to fall to 1.2 seconds behind Otis, which means the dirty air effect is going to be less pronounced. Now, you normally do have a bit of a draft off the back of these cars, up to 2 seconds, but it's within a second it becomes really noticeable. These cars pick up a huge draft off each other on the straight. And with Matthew Morhart there, making no mistake, that's not the draft. That's a very good run coming out of turn number 8. As he comes through 9 and in towards 10, well, Morhart is pushing right now, and Zahair by comparison, he is just feeling a little bit more pressure. Morhart to break in there. The concertina effect makes it look a bit more aggressive than it really is, but Morhart is working hard. Now, Zahair at this point, he's probably going to be thinking to himself, okay, Morhart's catching me. What do? Do I go defense or do I let this go? But that's going to come down to the confidence level. How confident is he of being able to defend, but how much time is it going to cost him? Alternatively, if he does let the place go, is he going to be able to latch himself onto the back of Morhart and be able to use him as a pace car, but also to help him save a bit more fuel? Well, we'll have to see, as meanwhile we have had a change for what is the Pro-Am lead. Glenn Bratton has lost out versus Tom Bryce. We believe that's happened down at turn number 10. And we suspect it's a mistake from Bratton that's enabled that, because Bratton was comfortable going into the corner from what I'm hearing in my ear. But then suddenly that lead has swapped. We're going to oh, goodness me! And the lead's going to swap back there, as that's going to be Tom Bryce bouncing off the apex curb at turn number 14, hitting the sausage curb in particular. And it grounded the car out, and the front splitter in particular taking a huge knock. And Bryce's car there, well, he's going to carry on, but I wouldn't be surprised he's going to need to use the fast repair when he comes into the pit lane for his fuel stop. Well, that was a huge ground out moment there for Tom Bryce, and well, that's rare, but when it happens, it can be a horrendous moment, and we'll get a replay of that very shortly. Plus, also, Bryce originally got ahead of Bratton, but that was the moment. Now, definitely there, Bryce is not going to want to repeat in a hurry, as meanwhile, Zahair and Morhart getting closer and closer to each other, and Morhart right now coming out these low-speed corners, he is flying, whereas Zahair, meanwhile, having to really take it casually. I think Morhart definitely now getting the hurry up from the team on the wall, as we ride aboard with the number 10 once again. And we'll go for the right-hander. I do love on the back there of the Arrive and Drive privateer machine of Shahi Zahair, saying not a real pro on the back of it. Well, he's definitely a pro in our eyes, I can tell you that. But I'm sure Morhart's going to look at every soft have a laugh as he goes very late on the brakes there. Dive into the inside, and well, looks all in. And I thought they might have missed his braking zone, but he's going to turn this into a potential move. Zahair goes defensive outside to inside. So and then the battle is on. And well, what a attempt there from Matthew Morhart, throwing it all up the inside. And I think that was just much reaction. He's going to go for it again here in towards turn number 13. So right now, Shahi's there really up against the ropes. He's going to go defensive all the way through the chicane. And Matthew Morhart there knows you can't go 2 into 1 through the left into right combination. He backs off, but what an attempt. And Shahi's there just about holding on, as meanwhile Ryan Otis right now sets another fastest lap of the race, another 10th gained on James Logsdon, and well, Logsdon and Otis definitely now starting to up the tempo more and more, but Zahair and Morhart's battle there, that's cost them the best part of 3 seconds off the leaders, but understandably when you do fight at any circuit, including the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, you're always going to cost yourselves time. But let's take a bit of time to take a look back at that, plus some other moments as we take a trip back in time. But just before we take a look back at their battle, of course we take a look at how Tom Bryce and Glenn Bratton swap places. So this was the original move by Bryce on Bratton. This was coming into the braking zone for turn number 10. And it was Glenn Bratton just taking a bit too much speed into the corner and letting the car roll deep into the runoff space. But after that, for Tom Bryce, he'll be happy to have got ahead, but he won't be happy how it all went a bit rolled for him as we stay with the replay footage. And Bryce being picked up by cameras here, and this was making his way in towards the chicane. And when you notice as he comes on down, he's going to hit that sausage curb at turn 14 high. And in fact, no, he lost the rear of the car on entry there. We didn't quite catch that the first time round. So Bryce carrying too much speed in and downshifting aggressively, and the rear let go. So it was not an impact to the sausage curb. It was a loss of control on the rear end and then hitting the curb for good measure. So that will have damaged the front splitter either way, and he will have put a bit of a burn onto those rear tyres as well. But meanwhile, this was a lap later, and this was Morhart versus Zahair, and at this point, you would have thought as they were coming down to La Caixa, it would have been as they were, but Morhart went all in there, and Zahair went to turn in, and then suddenly realised the Porsche died to the inside, but then he got the better run coming out of 10 in towards 11 and 12, and holding it outside to inside line. It was too wide all the way around, and Morhart had not given up at this point. He was still pushing for the move as they then made the way into his turn 13, but on that inside line, he then had to compromise. He knew he was going to be on the outside for the chicane, and at that point, unless you're going to fight it all the way around, but you'll need a nose ahead into that braking over turn 14, it was never going to work. But a brilliant move there from Morhart, but in the same respect, an absolutely decisive defence there from Shahi Zahair as we head back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. As we do come back, more to come. 15 minutes of this race almost done, and another 30 minutes still on the cards, plus the final lap. And right now, Shahi's there pulling away from Morhart, the gap up to 1.6 seconds. I wonder if Morhart's decided to back off a little bit just to simply cool the tyres back down. That fighting will have cost him a little bit of tyre temperature and a little bit of tyre life, and therefore he's just mediating it out. As they do say, everything in moderation. It does apply as well to sim racing or real life racing, as he makes his way on around through the corners. And for Matthew Morhart at the moment, but he's thinking strategically now. Well, I've got the pace to battle as Zahair, but have I got the ability to pass him? And the answer at the moment is yes, he's got the ability to try and find a way through, so long as he can get a bit of a nose ahead next time. James Logsdon, meanwhile, well, he's got Ryan Otis 1.2 seconds behind. Gap still coming down. As we do see the front ceramic brake discs there, or the carbon ceramic brake discs of Logsdon's at Porsche 911. Well, definitely glowing red hot there. Well, a surprise, not so, but definitely something to note in the fact they're starting to glow more and more. And that means he's starting to really pump some brake temperature. But that's to be expected with those brake discs, particularly in the heavy braking zones. And he'll be watching those brake temperatures to make sure he's not spiking them at any point, particularly later in the race, where they can definitely start to get a little bit too hot. But outside the top four, Jermaine Warren running in 5th place at the moment, a bit of a lonely 5th for the BMW driver as he makes his way on through the corners. And we do have Matt Best a bit further behind here in 6th. They're all pro drivers, and we're after his moment in the gravel trap right at the start of the race. For Best, he's definitely lapping right now, a little bit off of the drivers in front of him, and still trying to find that lap time. So it's not naturally coming to him compared to the top 5, but he's still steering clear of the rest of the field. Glenn Bratton running 7th, leading prime driver at the moment, and we'll Taylor Book out behind him, and Bryce a bit further back. And in fact, we have had a further incident for Bryce, which we have not quite caught on camera, and that's enabled Taylor Bookout to get back ahead. That was whilst we were in the replay footage earlier on, so therefore it means we won't be able to get a look at that, but Tom Bryce has fallen further back, and he completes your 9-car running order at this time. But heading on down, of course, we are missing a few drivers here today. We are missing the Ford GT, the family machine of Julian Jones, and we hope to see the EcoBoost machine back in full force next time out. And Bryce makes his way up the hill, but right now he's definitely trying to get his head down as much as possible. Looking from the back to the very front. We are now definitely into the pit window of the race. These cars can go a long time on those 50% fuel tanks. They can sometimes go to the best part of 10 minutes remaining in the race. Understandably, it will be the prerogative of the drivers to choose when to pit, and when do you pit? Well, given the leaders here of Logsdon and Otis, they probably won't pit until the very end of the fuel tank because they won't want to risk being called out. But meanwhile, Matthew Morhart has found his way back ahead of Shahi Zahair. Now that's been aided by an off-track for Zahair like to bend. He's gone straight on the hairpin, but Morhart's going to take that. He won't mind it where he's done it through making the move himself. All Terzi Zahair making a mistake. The move is done, but now can he break away? And of course, he goes from being the hunter to the hunted. As Zahair makes his way on towards the next lap, we ride on board with a Shranken driver. And coming out to the corner, well, there's just a little bit of understeer creeping in coming through turn number 16, but that's because of the dirty air there as he makes his way down towards turn number 1 once again. This battle rages on. Brilliant battling between these two, it must be said. And Zahair's going to look to the inside. Does he go for it on the brakes? No, he doesn't have the confidence there compared to Morhart. Again, the brakes have been upgraded on this BMW, but not to the point they're as strong as the Porsche, but they come a bit closer now. But of course, Zahair demonstrating this BMW definitely has the race pace in it compared to what we saw at Sebring, and that balance performance update has definitely been welcome to this car. Jermaine Warren is 5 seconds behind, but right now is lapping as quick as these guys. But if they do fight each other more and more, we could expect that Warren will be brought into the battle, and he'll be very happy if he can get involved in it. Zahair again a bit closer, coming in towards the hairpin of turn number 5, but not close enough to make a decisive dive and having to just wait. And at this point, can he risk coming into the pit lane? The answer to that is not really, because in doing so, he may end up coming out behind Bratton, Bookout and Bryce, and he'll have to fight his way past them unless they then decide to pit. So that's the gamble he would be playing with. So I think it really is the situation where they are locked into being out on circuit until they see the field start to pit behind them. And of course, if you are further down the order, you'd always have the option of the undercut, because there's a lesser risk of you coming out behind a driver who has yet to pit and having to fight your way past them. But looking to Taylor Bookout, he is gradually creeping up towards Glenn Bratton. And Bookout on a bit of a mission here to close up as much as he can. And Tom Bryce also matching Bookout's pace. So these three all inching together. So I suspect we're going to see a freeway battle for 7th place in the near future. It'll be interesting to see how that does develop with time. As we do see Tom Bryce a bit further behind, still pushing on. And the mistakes from early on and not dampening his enthusiasm whatsoever. And we're coming down the short stretch now towards turn number 10. This is one of the places where he does gain a lot of lap time compared to his rivals. And it definitely seems to be the key to unlocking his race pace. From the back of the field, back towards the front we go. And Logsdon still ahead, gap 1.4 seconds to Otis. Otis right now, I think, has started back with the pace a little bit. He was quicker. I think the whole game plan from Ryan Otis at the moment is keep within around 1.2 to 1.5 seconds, but at no point get too close. Don't get too close to be starting to overheat the front tyres and also experiencing the bigger effects of the dirty air, and save the fuel instead. Protect the tyres and be stronger in the later stages of the race. So Otis right now, I think, really toying with the situation as James Logsdon sets a purple opening sector. So Logsdon starting to go a bit quicker, starting to up the tempo. We'll see Otis most likely respond on the next lap if he's not aware of it on this one. Matthew Morhart sits in third, but some of you may be wondering how exactly did he get the third place in the end? Well, the good news is we have a replay to explain, and here we go, back in time. So this was making the way down towards the braking zone for turn number 10. Shahi Zahair made his way in. As he did so, went a little bit too deep on the corner and had to slide the car away. So that car was getting ready to go round there. So I think he had to feather the brakes and also just gradually reapply the throttle to settle it down. And Matthew Morhart just snuck up the inside and took the place just like that. So a decisive move there from Matthew Morhart, aided by the mistake of Zahair. But in the end, the pressure building for the BMW driver and definitely having its effects as we make our way back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. As we do come on back, we've still got more to come. We've still got 25 minutes of racing in this one. I suspect still more battling on the horizon. Taylor Bookout closing down Glenn Bratton as they get ready to battle for 7th place. And there you can see them now all in a single camera shot because Tom Bryce is also closing very rapidly as Shahi Zahair's into the pit lane. So he's the first driver to pit. So he's decided to buck the trend, which is normally to stay out as long as you can. And instead, he's going to go for the undercut. So perhaps he feels as though he can jump Morhart by going for the undercut strategy. Well, if so, where will this bring him out? Because, of course, we've only had him pit so far. Nobody else has come in. And the car is currently being serviced. The fuel will go in as Glenn Bratton goes a little bit deep there through the chicane. He just about keeps it together. And Zahair now makes his way to the pit exit. He's got enough of a gap there. I think he will be safe in the battle for 7th and 8th. And there you go. So Shahi Zahair does get it timed right. That undercut could work out now. But he's going to have to need to go absolutely all in here to make the move. Meanwhile, speaking of making a move on circuit, Bratton being attacked by Bookout on the inside. And that's going to be a smooth transition there for 7th place from Taylor Bookout getting ahead of the prime leader. And that's the top 7 of pros. And Bratton has got Bryce closing once again. As you see, Tom Bryce in the rear of the picture. But from him, he's still got a 2.4 second gap to go if he wants to take on Bratton, who's all over the back of Bookout and essentially saying to him, while giving you the place, now please pull me away. Don't let me fall into the clutches of Bryce. Well, you can see the Team Bearpoke driver Bookout. He's just trying to get his head down here. I think he doesn't mind aiding or what is circumventing the prime battle. I think his thought process is just simply hold that 7th place and see if he can go hunting after 6th, but not when he makes a mistake like that in turn number 5, and suddenly he's got to do it all over again, has poor Taylor. And right now the number 77 driver will be thinking to himself, what do I have to do to make a place? Well, he can make the place, there's no doubt about it. He's just got to keep it on the road. As Tom Bryce will be on the back of him, probably thinking to himself right now, okay, how am I going to clear the pro driver? To see what's going to happen there, but definitely a Bookout for every bit of a step forward he has. He also seems to have a step backwards, unfortunately. Matthew Morhart reacts to Shahi Zahair. So Zahair came in on the previous lap. And Morhart decides, right, I'm going to be coming in on the lap after. I know what your game plan is, Shahi. And as he makes his way on down, well, here comes Jermaine Warren, goes on to another lap. And well, the middle of the pack racing driver here, now up in a 3rd place, but just on track, not on strategy. And here comes Matt Best into the pit lanes. The Best decides it's time to come in. Doesn't have the pace of the top 5 today, it would seem. But here comes Shahi Zahair, makes his way out the final corner. Morhart right now, making his way up to speed. Off the pit limiter he goes. It's going to be very close between the two of them. Well, I think Matthew Morhart is going to get this done. I think he is going to retake what will be effective 3rd place in pro and overall once the pit stops are all complete. And Shahi Zahair, in fact, falls back to the tune of what is a 2nd behind Morhart. So he's, in fact, lost a little bit of time in the pit stop. End to end, the delta was a whole 2nd in the pit lane in the favour of Morhart, and that is what has enabled Matthew Morhart to retake that position. If Zahair had been a bit quicker in the pits, he did have the shorter stop, but it was his end-to-end pit time that was a 2nd longer. He would have been ahead, or at least side by side, coming down towards turn number 1. So Zahair tried the undercut, it's failed, but he's not out of this battle yet, and Morhart will know that, as he's now got a hold on the number 10 for the remaining 22 minutes or so. Glenn Bratton comes in, and as quick as he comes in, he leaves. 11.7 second stop there stationary to put the fuel in the car. Not too much fuel saving being done by Glenn Bratton, and also the team most likely taking a look over the car, given a couple of offs he has had. He makes way onwards, so Tom Bryce will now take the pram lead, at least on the road, but not necessarily so on strategy, and we'll have to wait and see what this will translate into and when he will decide to pit. Now, will he react, or will he just decide, I'm happy with the car and stay out there? Now, of course, given the fuel goes in, what's so important about the pit stop? What's the thing that perhaps we don't know or don't visibly see? Well, of course, these drivers, whilst they're out on circuit, they're constantly pumping tyre temperature. When you come into the pit lane, even when you're stationary, only for approximately somewhere between 9.5 to 11.5 seconds that we're expecting today, you do lose a few degrees of tyre temperature. And that in turn means you then got to reheat the tyres when you come out the pit lane. you're losing just a bit of temperature, and in turn, that doesn't mean you lose all the grip, but you lose enough to make that first lap out of the pit lane just a little bit more precarious. And those who can switch the tyres back on and nail that out lap, they can gain a lot of time, but those who cannot, they can lose effective time instead. And that's sometimes why you don't want to pit until the very last moment on that fuel tank that you start on, because the idea is you don't want to have to go through that reheating phase of the tyres, chasing after somebody. As Taylor Bookout is in, so he comes in on the end of lap number 14, making his way on down. And, well, where will this bring him out in relation to Bryce and Bratton when it's all said and done? We suspect that Glenn Bratton will get the jump ahead of him, given the fact that Bratton's making his way down through turn 13 at Europe Car Corner and shortly through RACC chicane. And, well, Bookout is now being searched. In fact, this might be a lot closer than we anticipated. In fact, Bookout is already leaving his pit garage, so he makes way out. 10 seconds was his stop stationary, and he's going to be well clear. Glenn Bratton, who's just making his way down the start-finish straight. You can see him in the rear of the picture, so Bookout is going to be clear, so he moves back into 7th place. Bratton 8th, so that will translate most likely to 6th place for Bookout. But what about Bratton versus Bryce? Bryce going as long as he can on his strategy after starting from the pit lane, and this is all to make sure he can overcut or go just longer than Bratton and jump ahead of him. Making his way up towards what will be turn number 9 once again. And right now, Tom Bryce are definitely keeping it all together, at least for now, but there's still a bit of work to be done. Speaking of work that has yet to be done, James Logsdon's team have yet to do work on the car in the pit, and Ryan Otis 1.6 seconds back. But Otis setting a personal best final sector on his previous lap. So that gap opening, I think right now this is not just because James Logsdon is trying to get the hammer down, but also it's because Ryan Otis is definitely just turning the wick down a little bit to manage the delta between himself and Otis. And, well, it's going to be all about the back and forth. And right now, these two drivers are definitely exchanging lap times if they're on the stock market floor, but it is going to be so pivotal when they come into the pit lane. How much can Otis gain on a shorter stop? We believe he's really trying to do as much fuel saving as possible, and he has saved the tyres. He's going to be a very aggressive driver in that second stint if he doesn't get the jump on Logsdon. I can predict that. Jermaine Warren, he's running third at the moment. Remember, he has yet to pit, and we expect he's going to fall back into 5th place. Well, he's going to fall back even further down when he slides loose there at turn number 5. Well, the BMW driver getting away with a near miss in terms of a spin, but that's not the way you want it to go. The 214 driver there just having a little bit of slide loose, loss of rear traction, and that'll be most likely he's trying to carry a little bit too much speed, and the rear of the car has just not settled down at the hairpin. And keep in mind, we have got very cold tyre temperatures here compared to how they would normally be. They're having to constantly pump that heat because we do have a track temperature of 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and that translates into an identical track temperature. We haven't got too many cars out there, plus of course it is just after what is 9 o'clock in the evening at local time. There is no sunlight out there at all, so therefore this circuit is not being warmed up. Plus we've got quite a bit of cloud as well. That's not going to help retain the temperature. It is going to see temperature dissipate from the track surface. So this is one of those circuits right now where it's going to give very little. It is going to feel like a proverbial ice rink, as many would say, with regards to the fact it will be a shivering circuit, and therefore every little bit of temperature you can pump into those tyres is going to be desperately needed. But meanwhile, as Warren goes on to another lap, he's still refusing to come into the pits at the moment. Of course, he can't refuse forever. They don't have the ability to no-stop this race. And that 50% fuel tank definitely forces them to pit, even in these sprint races. It's had a bit of strategic variety, but Warren right now just keeping his head up high and seeing whether he can perhaps pace himself up to Matthew Morehart and Shahi Zahair as the race goes on. But Morehart is gradually dropping Zahair. That gap now has opened up to 4 seconds. So I suspect Morehart's just been able to get the car switched on a little bit sooner. And Zahair falling in backwards little by little. That gap has absolutely grown. Over the last 5 laps, that gap has essentially quadrupled from a second to 4 seconds. And Zahair right now has got to try and get himself back into the game. About 16 minutes left to go, where he's going to need to start really gaining some lap time. He's going to need to try and find what would be, if my mental maths is correct, given the fact we have about 1 3/4 minutes a lap, well, that means we're going to have the best part of another, what will be around 7 laps, including the lap they are currently on. So therefore he's going to need to find half a second a lap, really, which is going to be a very challenging prospect, given the fact that Morehart and Zahair have been so close in pace all the way through the race up towards this point. But back to Logsdon we go, and as he makes his way out the chicane, Ryan Otis is now within 1.2 seconds. He did, for a brief moment, get within a second coming towards the final sector on that lap. So Otis setting a purple final sector previously, but not that time around. Decides just to go for a close to personal best. And James Logsdon, meanwhile, matching his previous best lap times. They're both lapping in the 42s, but Ryan Otis a 42.8, Logsdon a 42.9 to nearest 10th. So Otis now turning it up a little bit, and I think getting ready for his pit stop and saying, right, I need to be a bit closer now if I want to try and make the jump on Logsdon in the pit lane. We're coming on through and up towards turn number 4. Again, both drivers absolutely driving right on the limit as we jump on board with your number 3 driver. And the limit of what's possible there. There's a lot more lap time out there for both of them. I think if they were at a full push, but right now they're making a huge balancing act between protecting the tyres, managing the fuel, and also maximising lap time. As you can see, Otis there battling with the car a little bit coming out of turn number 5. A bit of an understeer, transition to oversteer, which you expect perhaps on the Porsche there. This is one of those cars that's driven by the throttle pedal, but of course, this being the Porsche 911 RSR GTE, where the engine is mounted in the middle of the car, not at the rear, so breaking away from convention. And well, if you go back through the logs and the interviews held with Porsche engineers at the time, because it was one of the big moments of motorsport when Porsche did announce that the 911 RSR GTE would not have the engine mounted over the rear axle, not because they were forced to by the rules and regulations of GTEs. They could have mounted it over the rear axle, but it was because it was the most competitive position for the engine to have it over was the middle, so just in front of the rear axle rather than over it. So Porsche having to break their long trend, which you will see in all GT3 cars of Porsches in the modern era, and also cars preceding this one of being rear mounted. But as they both go into the pit lane, we'll forget about drivetrain positions. Right now, James Logsdon and Ryan Otis both in. The fuel tank has gone as far as it can, and under night lights, well, they'll come to a brief halt. But who exactly will be coming out of the pit lane first? Well, Jermaine Warren's going to be coming into the pit lane surely then soon. He's going to be the last driver to serve his pit stop, and Tom Bryce will need to do the same. So therefore, the remainder of the field will come on in. And, well, Otis gets ahead of Logsdon because he's ahead in the garages. But will he be ahead leaving it? As James Logsdon right now, we sit on board for him for a brief moment. And, well, he gets to leave first. So he gets going. And Ryan Otis follows immediately afterwards. So Otis was able to save 7 tenths of fuel over the course of the first stint, as we do see Jermaine Warren going another lap. So Warren's going the whole distance, but Otis has not been able to make the jump. And Jermaine Warren, meanwhile, well, I think a part of him was hoping he'd perhaps lead lap of the race, but not quite so. So he holds on to third for now. He's on the back of the leaders, but remember, Warren has not pitted, so he is still yet to come in and put some fuel in that BMW, but I suspect then he's going to have to come in soon. But what a lot of fuel saving he has done. This has been very impressive from Jermaine Warren, and Ryan Otis has not had the best out of the pit lane. In fact, he's lost time to Logsdon to the tune of a whole, what was 7 tenths of a second. So Logsdon right now back in the lead, back in the leading track position, and with it just forcing Otis to have to back off a little bit. But I wonder whether Ryan's just trying to get himself readjusted to the car. Now the tyre temperatures have to be heated back up, and he'll go on the full attack. And I wonder if also he was caught out a little bit by Jermaine Warren being so close. And I think both drivers right now will have to remind themselves that Jermaine has yet to pit. Of course, that's not mentally easy to do, and Tom Bryce has yet to pit as well. So he stays out, so it looks like the leaders there. The fuel tanks are not quite done, so they both decide to tactically come in with the best part of 14 minutes remaining. But right now, Tom Bryce staying out there and will pumping out some absolutely brilliant lap times, although his last lap, not the best laps. I think it was a bit of a mistake for Bryce in that previous lap. In fact, there was, and we can give you a replay of that as we take a quick look back in time, ladies and gentlemen. And this is what happened to Tom Bryce. So Bryce made his way through turn 1 into 2. And as he did so, took a lot of curb there, and that unsettled the rear of the car. The rear right tyre struggled to find grip and went sideways into the gravel trap, but not completely, and just about able to keep it together. So, with Bryce losing a lot of time he's gained, that could definitely see him back behind Bratton when the pit stops are complete. But with that, we go back to your live racing. We do come on back, and well, Bryce still carrying on for now, but we could see a pit stop very shortly. Warren is into the pit lane, so I think that's as far as the fuel tank can go. 19 laps and that's it. And well, meanwhile, will we see Bryce come in? The answer, we're about to find out as he comes down the hill from turn 13 in towards 14 and 15. Right his way from left into right as Jermaine Warren leaves the pit lane. He will return to the race in 5th place. Not close enough to Shaheed's ahead whatsoever, but safe from Bryce. And well, here comes Bryce in. And now, where will Taylor Bookout be? Well, Bookout's making his way through turn number 12 in towards 13. So we suspect he will just about beat Bryce out the pit lane. Bratton, meanwhile, I think he's going to come up behind Bryce. I don't think he's going to get the jump on him. As Bryce right now still heading down pit road, about to be serviced. And well, as we see Bookout come out the final corner. So he will definitely clear Bryce at this rate. Bryce being serviced. There he is, the lazy boy machine now, just taking a bit of a lazy moment. Bookout charged on pass, but where is Bratton? Here is Bratton, making his way out the final corner. Where is Bryce? He's making his way off the limiter line. And so for Tom Bryce, this is going to be close. That mistake, has it proven costly? Or has he been able to stay ahead? Has he crafted the time? It's going to be too wide heading towards turn number 1, but Bryce will have the inside. He has to respect the pit line, but he's just about to stay ahead, and Glenn Bratton in the end does not find a way through. But now can Bratton attack here? Remember the fact he's got the warmed up tyres. He has pitted. Meanwhile, Tom Bryce, when it says please stand by in the back of the car, and he has got to stand by with regards to getting those tyres up to temperature. So the 289 of Bratton's now got to really make a decisive move here. If he goes for it now on this lap, he may be able to get ahead. But otherwise, if Bryce is able to get that tyre temperature back into the car, it does look as though Bryce might be safe. Now, whilst all this has been happening, we have unfortunately had the retirement of Matt Best in this race due to a technical issue with the car. We lost him quite early on, unfortunately. So therefore, a bit of commiserations to Best, who definitely was not having the happiest of days in the office, given the pace of the car just did not seem to be there with the leading pro drivers. Unfortunately for the Texas Speed Sim Racer driver, things have gone from good to bad to worse today, but hopefully we'll see him back on form at Imola in 2 weeks' time. But meanwhile, Bratton staying close. And the 289 driver right now not able to make a move on Bryce, and Bryce now starting to get that tyre temperature back, and he will feel a little bit safer here as he heads into the braking zone for turn number 10, and Bratton just not able to capitalise on having a warmed up car there, even with Bryce making a mistake. But you've got to imagine, given the fact that Bryce did lose the best part of 8 seconds as a result of that slide at turn number 2, well, if he had not made that mistake, he would have been well clear of Bratton, and that shows you just what pace Bryce was pumping in on was that extended first stint. So well done to Bryce for that. He has really been able to overhaul Bratton, but now he's got to be able to make the breakaway, which isn't going to be as easy as they come out of the chicane. Meanwhile, we look back to your leaders, Logsdon and Otis. 9 minutes left. They've got this lap 21, and I suspect another 4, if not 5 to go. And well, right now, Otis closing a little bit. He's brought the gap down to 8 tenths of a second. And looking back from the rear Logsdon's car, that spec, that Porsche with its 2 headlights, will just be inching closer and closer with every corner if Otis has his way. I think that's what Logsdon's worried about here. But of course, it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass, as the late great Murray Walker once said. On the way through 15 into 16. And right now, all Logsdon needs to do is hold track position and not make any mistakes. And when Otis does look for the move, he can make his car a bit wider, and he can just make it even harder to pass. But the Team Bear Poke driver, at this point in time, just needs to keep his head down here and not make any errors. That's the most important part of this battle. Make an error, and suddenly he lose out, as Matthew Morehart will make no mistake for him. A 42.927, that's his first 42 of the day. And well, meanwhile, we've had a mistake. Oh, that's Glenn Bratton. Where's he parked up? And that's in the middle of the road at turn number 5. So he's going to be well clear before anybody does approach him. But Glenn Bratton's had a big going around there at the hairpin. And well, his battle with Tom Bryce does come to an abrupt halt. He won't be catching him anymore. But how exactly did it go wrong there for the BMW driver, I hear you ask? Well, here's a quick replay to explain, ladies and gentlemen, because that's an uncharacteristic error from Glenn Bratton. But if Bryce has made an error, so has Bratton. And indeed, this is what happened. So, coming down from turn number 4 in towards 5, chasing after Bryce as relentlessly as he could. Made his way in on the brakes, carried a lot of speed there, and in the end, going a little bit deeper into the corner, trying to maintain that momentum, but dropped to gear mid-apex, and the rear tyres just spun up there, and the rear of the car had not settled down. Remember, front mid-engine rear-wheel drive, there's no weight on the rear of that car mid-corner transition, and the BMW's rear end just sliding loose. And with that, he lost his opportunity to chase Bryce down as we return to your live racing. So more time still to go, and with it, there's time for Bratton to try and make amends. But of course, those tyres will be hot, and I suspect he's coming into the pit lane there. That might be for a drive-through penalty. And will the instant point limit quite low, of course, to encourage respectful racing? Not that we don't have it here at the Middle of the Pack Racing League. And we are just going to get confirmation on what's happened to Bratton. Is it a drive-through penalty? And the answer to that question is yes, it is. So the loss of control there has put him over the instant point count, and it is a drive-through penalty for Glenn Bratton. And well, he will go a lap down as he makes round down pit lane. The blue flags will be waving for him, and will have no impact on the battle between Logsdon and Otis, given the fact they will pass him just before that braking zone. And right now, that lead battle, it's a good thing we come back to it, because Otis now 3.5 tenths of a Logsdon. He's been saving up for this all race. As Ryan Otis, I think he's saved the tyres. He's got a bit of an advantage there, maybe a couple of percent. They do measure it on a percentage of the tyre remaining. And right now, I would say that Ryan Otis probably has got around about 3 to 5% more tyre life left compared to Logsdon. And that's why he's able to close this gap. As Logsdon sliding a little bit there, coming through turn number 4. The rear of the car just cutting a little bit loose, but Otis can't really capitalise there. That's why those high load corners, where you're really abusing the outside grip of the left-hand side tyres, but also what you're doing, you're relying on the downforce of the car to help you carry the speed. But when you are behind another car. You've got that dirty air. It just takes away some of the front end downforce. Ooh, as that's a little bit of a wobble there. The car snatching away of understeer for Otis, under braking in towards turn number 7, and then the dirty air causing the front end to wash out. And for Ryan Otis right now, that is the problem here at Catalunya, in the fact when you've got a lot of air on these cars, well, suddenly that dirty air just completely hurts the front end. It causes so much understeer to arise, and Otis right now has got to try and put it in the knowledge bank there. The fact that when he gets that close within 3/10, suddenly this car is no longer compliant. He's got to brake a lot earlier and turn in earlier as well and be ready for the car to snatch on him. But as he makes his way in towards turn number 13, well, right now immediately coming back. He's got that gap back within a second already for a couple of corners. So Otis right now not wasting any time in the Red Bull privateer machine. And well, definitely it's going to be James Logsdon just needs to keep it together. But understandably, for your leading driver Team Bearpo, his thought process at this time has got to be, well, if Otis has moments like that, he's got to be cognizant of the fact that as soon as Otis gets close, he's starting to struggle. So therefore, as a driver, don't feel pressured. Just maintain your line and just get ready to go defensive if needed, but only if absolutely necessary. And I suspect you only need to go defensive if that gap comes down below 2.5 tenths. Then he may be worried into the heavier braking zones. But meanwhile, drama for Jermaine Warren. He's got it wrong at turn number 12, although he's not at risk of losing the place there in 5th place at the moment, given he's got the best part of 30 seconds to Taylor Book out before he made the mistake. And in turn, he's got the best part of 30 seconds to Shahi Zahair up in front of him. It's in a bit of no man's land, but a small error there for Jermaine Warren coming through that corner. And well, we won't cut to it right now. Again, it is a battle for the lead that we do have on our hands, but understandably, Warren there making a mistake. Nobody thought this out there today, although it's micro mistakes for your leaders, although James Logsdon's yet to really make a mistake, to be fair to him. And well, you can definitely say his race has been faultless, but Otis attack it again, and you can see the car does not want to turn through turn 7 into 8, but Otis is throwing it at the corners and essentially saying you will carry the speed, as he runs a little bit wide there and takes the cone for good measure. That poor cone there, well, it definitely will be restored later on. And well, Otis right now throwing everything at this to try and get into an attacking position, as Matthew Morehart's had a spin, and Shahi Zahair's going to come through. So Morehart lost it there, going through turns 8 into 9. And well, Morehart dropping down there. We get a quick replay what exactly has happened to Matthew Morehart. And here we go, because this is a big moment for 3rd place in this race. And this is Morehart making his way in towards turn number 7. Plenty of curb there. Carried all the speed in. And the rear of the car just slightly let go there. And was a bit of an uncharacteristic slide. But in the end, having to get the car back together. But gently so. Getting us very close to the wall there as he touched the grass. And Shahi's hair just scooping his way on past there before Morehart could get himself up to speed. But we head back to live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do, well, there's still more to come here. As we do look to 3.5 minutes remaining. And right now, James Logsdon on to lap 25, coming all the way through turns 1, 2, and 3. And Otis now within 3/10 of a second. He's been here before, but this time he's got the knowledge. He knows within 3/10, the front end of his Porsche is no longer wanting to go to turn in anywhere near as much it previously does. And for Logsdon, the Team Bearpo driver, well, he's got to make sure here he does only go defensive where he needs to, because when he defends elsewhere, he's just costing himself time. And Shahi Zahair is 18 seconds behind these drivers, so therefore it means that they can afford to fight and they won't be at risk of bringing a 3rd player into the battle. But they've got this lap plus most likely one more to go. And right now for James Logsdon, all he's got to do is keep his cool. For Ryan Otis, he's the driver who's got to do all the hard work in trying to find that lead, or at least an opportunity to attack for it. Well, you can see he's definitely pushing on. He's done his research, he's done his homework. 3.5 tenths as they head down towards KX, a hairpin. No way in at the moment. Logsdon just simply holding his line, although does go a little bit defensive there and turning a bit earlier on the turning compared to normal, and that's going to give Otis the confidence that right now he's starting to put some mental pressure on. But we ride on board as he goes for a bit of a switchback there through turn number 12. That's trying to offset the dirty air in towards turn number 13. There's going to be no opportunity here. Down the hill they both come, but you can see really right in the rear bumper right now of Logsdon, getting so close through the chicane. It looks closer than it is, however. Of course, that's the concertina effect, and here they come out of the final corner to go into what will be, we do believe, the final lap of this race, ladies and gentlemen. We can confirm the white flag is waving, and therefore only 26 laps, 1 to go. Can Logsdon hold on to take away the win from Ryan Otis? Well, Otis looks the inside. He wants to make it back-to-back victories, but it's not going to work out there as they come through turns 1 and 2. And remember, for Ryan Otis, he took the win in round number 4. He lost out in round number 3. And right now he wants to try and make it back-to-back wins, because we have had different winners in each of our races so far in the pros and overall. And Ryan Otis wants to be the first repeat winner of the season. But James Logsdon, he wants to make it 5 pro winners in 5 races. But right now, can he do it? as we look to the external view, and you can see there Otis not close enough to look for the move into turn 5, but Logsdon definitely going a bit defensive now, starting to feel the pressure a little bit. And just putting himself in the middle of the road, trying to make sure that Otis does not have the confidence to try and go for a lunge up the inside. But in towards turn number 7, this is the corner that's been catching out Otis time and time again. But it doesn't catch him out this time, he gets it absolutely spot on. Turn number 9, no, taking opportunity here, but a good run out this corner, because setting up for a good run into the cakes, a hairpin at turn number 10. He's been 3/10, he powers his way onwards, but Logsdon getting the better traction off the corner initially, and that just keeps him safe as Otis peels the inside for a brief moment. Not close enough here, just trying to put in a threat, trying to psych Logsdon into a mistake. But for James Logsdon right now, he has definitely got a fortress of a mind as he makes way up the hill through the wind to turns 11 and 12. 20 seconds left on the clock. This will definitely be your last lap. Indeed, they'll practically come to the finish line as the clock goes to 0. Logsdon right now defending hard in towards the chicane. No real move here for Ryan Otis. This will be a run out of turn 16, a drag race to the line. But here they come down through the last couple of quarters in towards turn 16 for James Logsdon. It's a good round at the final bend, and we'll have our 5th winner in 5 races as James Logsdon holds on to take victory here at Catalunya. Ahead of Ryan Otis, who finished just behind by 2.6 tenths a second. And then it will be taking 3rd place shortly after Tom Bryce and Glenn Bratton. In fact, Glenn Bratton comes at home a lap down in 8th place, 2nd in the primes. Well done to Glenn. It will be Shahi Zahair who comes through to take 3rd place on the overall pro podium. The Arrive and Drive privateer doing a brilliant job today. And then it will be Matthew Morhart who comes through 4th place in the end with a critical error midway through the 2nd stint, costing the chance of the podium, and he'll have to regroup and recalculate going into the next round. And then we will have 25 seconds before we do get to Jermaine Warren, who makes his way down the hill right now, and the middle of the pack racing driver today. Well, he's not been in the pace of the top 4, and also he's had a couple of moments of inconsistency, but still, on his debut in the pro class, he will round off the top 5 there and bring home some very valuable points as he comes home in the MOP Racing BMW M8, and then we will have Taylor Bookout very shortly coming on through for what will be 6th place, as he makes his way between the corner apexes here for what will be Team Bear Pope. And it's been a challenging day today, having started from 7th place, has made his way to 6th, found his way past a couple of prime drivers along the way, and will the 77 driver here will take that 6th place, as we have had what is then a brilliant race for both him and Tom Bryce. And Tom Bryce is going to come on through to take home what will be his 2nd prime win of the season, and he adds that win from round number 3. Well done to Tom, a brilliant drive from him in the back and forth with Glenn Bratton, and he was able to prove superior here today. And sadly, we did have the retirement for Matt Best, who fell by the wayside midway through the race. But as James Logsdon cools on down and soaks in the cause, well, it's that 1st win of the season for him over on in pro. A huge win for him in that battle with Ryan Otis, and they enjoyed that one, no doubt about it. It was a game of cat and mouse, but in the end, James Logsdon needed to take the lead at the start, and that's all he needed to win this race today, and then put up a fortuitous defence. Well, with that, our drivers cool them down, they head to the pit lane, and we take a look to the scenic view, and with it, the race results. And as they do come up on screen, well, round number 5 of the middle of the pack Racing League GTE League for 2026, brought to you on iRacing here today from the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. Definitely was a thrilling round. And in the end, we may have only had 9 drivers, but to be fair, as always, our drivers showing it's not about the quantity of drivers that makes a race, it is the quality, and it was absolutely top-notch. James Logsdon may have started 2nd, but in the end, making that move into lead around the outside on lap number 1 into turn 1 ahead of Ryan Otis, and he stayed there throughout the whole race, even when Ryan Otis had saved the tyres and saved the fuel to be more competitive right at the end of the race. But the Team Bear Poke driver able to take that victory by what was a quarter of a second over Ryan Otis. And then we did see Shahi Zahair take 3rd place, the privateer, a bit further behind, but in the end of the back and forth battle for 3rd place with Matthew Morhart, well, felt as though he'd lost it all after the pit stops, but in the end, with Morhart making a critical error coming through turn number 8, the car sent sideways, and Zahair was able to take that 3rd place back. Morhart's at 4th in the end then, a bit frustrating end to his day, but he was clear of Jermaine Warren, who finished in 5th there for MOP Racing, and Taylor Bookout a bit further behind at 6th place for Team Bear Pope, bringing home some solid points. Tom Bryce, your prime winner, becoming a repeat winner in the Prime class there, and indeed adding himself to 2 wins in the Prime class this season, like Jermaine Warren, who now sits in the Pro class for the second half of the season. Well, Bryce there definitely a step ahead of Glenn Bratton today, and the Prime set unfortunately losing out with that drive-through penalty, relegating him a lap down. But he still saw the checker flag, and we unfortunately did not see a checker flag for Matt Best for Texas Speed Sim Racing, who retired with 13 laps to go. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's a rundown of the finishing positions, and all those positions do stand because of Stewards' inquiries. There were no instant reports for this round, and what it means is we can now bring you the post-round championship standings as we do leave the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya behind, and this is how we go into round number 6 in terms of how the points stand. Because as we can see, starting with the overall Drivers' Championship, and this being for all 8 rounds in the Pro class, James Logsdon, with that win, has now opened his lead back up there to 189 points versus the 172 of Chad Henson. Keep in mind, of course, that these points now do consider a drop score. Shahi Zahair now sits in 3rd place on 167 points, just ahead of Matt Best, who unfortunately not bringing any points home today, and therefore will fall to 4th, and furthermore so, down towards what we Taylor Bookout, who's closing the distance in 5th place. Ryan Otis moves into 6th now on 149 points, rapidly rising up through the ranks, and if he can make it a couple more wins, he may just be able to get inside the top 3 before the end of the season. With Matthew Morehart, me on 127 points, that 4th place today, causing a split between the 2 of them. It's then Julian Jones, Jermaine Warren, and Gabriel Ferreira who complete the top 10, with Eric Lagai best the rest of the 11th. And then we do have Blake Phillips ahead of Jason Landry, with Edwin Offrey and David Adeyemi completing the Pro Overall Championship standings. But then we can see in the Prime class to the right of your table, well, Donald Sepek on top at the moment, because remember, drop scores at the moment are applying, and therefore Bryce has improved. He's now only a point behind there, and Glenn Bratton a further 7 adrift. But it's looking close, and remember, Jermaine Warren being promoted to Pro, the points have been recalculated, and that's why it's so tight at the top of Pro-Am. Mark Senegal, meanwhile, sits in 4th place there, not on the grid today, ahead of Roger Ganesh, and it's Carl Peterson and Bill DaCosta who complete the Pro-Am standings. And do love the graphics there with regards to the spreads with regards to our drivers, and we can definitely see it's looking very close, tantalisingly tight at the top of the Prime class there, with the top 3 separated by only an 8-point spread. But as for the Euro Cup standings, of course, this will be the points of rounds 5 to 8. There is no drop score in this one. All 4 rounds do apply, and we can see after our first round on the European continent, James Logsdon has set the benchmark, leading the way by 2 points ahead of Ryan Otis, and Shahi Zahair is in 3rd, a further 4 points adrift. Matthew Morehart, Jermaine Warren, Taylor Bookout, and Matt Best will complete the Euro Cup standings, and in fact, Best will take points as a result of the classification. We do correct that there. In the Prime class, only 2 Prime drivers on the grid today. Well, Tom Bryce has set the initial benchmark a point ahead of Glenn Bratton, but we suspect it's going to be back and forth between them all the way to the end of the Euro Cup. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, we definitely recommend checking out then our official Discord, invite link available on screen as seen there. If you want to get to the beating heart of the community and get to talk to the drivers, the staff members and the admins, you'll not find a more friendly place for sim racers, whether you are a rookie racer all the way through to a professional. But if perhaps you're a little bit shy and therefore want to follow us on social media instead, of course you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/MOP Racing. We can stay up to date with all the latest news and announcements from Middle of the Pack Racing League, and also the try and tribulations of the MOP Racing esports teams. They look to go for success, including, of course, in the 24 hours of Nürburgring this weekend on iRacing. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now look to our next round. And next up, we make our way to Italy for the Autodromo International Enzo Indino Ferrari. And well, whilst the racing will occur on what will be none other than Wednesday the 6th of May, so only in a few days' time. We'll be bringing it to you as if it were live on Saturday the 16th of May as we continue the story of the season and see how our drivers get on at the circuit that's filled with chicanes, but also extended and extensive varieties of straights. And after our opening Euro Cup round, we've definitely seen that James Logsdon has continued the trend of making a different winner in every race, pro and overall. 5 winners in 5 rounds. Will we see our first repeat winner overall next time out? And Ryan Otis in particular had tried to get the chip off his shoulder and make sure that he's able to beat Logsdon, but Logsdon in turn would like to continue a win streak if possible. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Ams, we definitely got to see plenty of battling in the end between Tom Bryce and Glenn Bratton, with Bratton not quite able to keep Bryce at bay. But again, with a few Pro-Am drivers perhaps back on the grid next time out, it's all to play for at the very top for the Pro-Am Championship. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the Middle of the Pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. You've been tuning into a Paul Walsh production. And until next time on the GTE League, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, have a great rest of your weekend, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.